Everybody, this is Craig Tiener for The Mindful Eye and The Daily Critique. Today's image was submitted by Kevin, who is an advanced photographer from the UK. We don't have all the metadata on this one. We know that this portrait was shot with a Lensbaby, one of my favorite lenses, so I just want to get right into what I like about this one. And let me go ahead and say that I'm inside of Photoshop CS3. I'm recording this on the road, and what you'll see me do within the next week is come back and put this image in the digital darkroom, and I'm going to go through and show you specifically all the things I've done in Photoshop to work on the portrait. Right now we're just going to look at the layers and not look at all the masking and everything. And right when I look at this portrait, one of the things I love about the Lensbaby is its ability to draw my eye to the most important thing in the scene because of the selective focus nature of the Lensbaby. If you don't know about the Lensbaby, it's a specialty lens that has a sweet spot of focus right in the middle of the field of view. And it's a normal lens, 50mm lens, and a very fast lens if you shoot it wide open. It's an f2 lens. When you combine the shallow depth of field that you could get at 50mm at f2 with the idea that the front element is distorted and you have the sweet spot of focus and distortions around the edges, it can do a really neat job of at one time drawing your eye to the sweet spot of focus. One of the other things I love about the Lensbaby is because that sweet spot of focus is in the middle of the field of view, it sort of encourages you to break a rule, which is, don't center your subject. Here Kevin is centering the portrait subject, but because of these distortions, even though the mask here, the main subject of the image is centered, you get a real strong sense of dynamic movement towards that middle. And so it doesn't feel as static. You're especially seeing those distortions in the lower part of the image where you have detail down in here that can be distorted. I'm also enjoying the idea here of simplicity and separation from the background. There's a little bit of the background that I want to change, but the portrait subject here separating from the background. I'm enjoying in the image the feeling of the symmetry and the centering, which can set up a feeling of two, and then you've got the two sunflowers up here. I think that works really well. It's subtle, but the head is tilted here, so you get a little bit of a movement of a diagonal there, and the two sunflowers are on a diagonal, and you have two areas that come off of the sunflowers that make a pair. The way this person is turned and the way this has been framed, you have the two halves of the body. So I like that feeling of centering and then getting a feeling of sort of symmetry and pairs of two. The beads are sort of doing the same thing. There's also a feeling of soft light in this image, and the way that it's falling on the mask and the reflectivity of the mask is also really bringing this out as the main subject, and pretty neat from a color standpoint. You know, you've got this real strong feeling of warm and cool playing off of each other in a dynamic way, sort of blue and yellow. Pretty powerful, and then you get a third color in there which can make things dynamic, the green. When I started to think about perfect world improvement for this image, one of the things that I want to do almost right away when I look at the image is, if you're open to changing the editorial content of the image, is get rid of these real strong horizontal lines in the back. There's so much movement in this image that goes up and makes this a sort of growing vertical shape, and then this real strong horizontal line right here in the image to me really sort of stops me and is a pretty major distraction, and I'd like to make that go away in the image. The other thing that I think of right away when I look at this image is, with all the pairs of twos in this image and the feeling of centering and symmetry, once that sort of gets set up for the viewer, then when that falls apart, it can be real obvious. And this hand is making such a strong gesture. It's pointing on one of the major diagonals, it's pointing to the main subject, and that starts to leave this area of the image for me really out of balance. So since we're already going to change editorial content once I start going down that road, the other thing that I would consider doing is taking this hand, putting it on its own layer and flipping it and putting it in here, so there's a real strong sense of symmetry. From there, I'd like to open up the eyes. One of the cool things about this is sort of very surreal with the mask and the costume, the hat, and all of these things that give this a feeling of sort of theatrical, but then you can see when you look through the mask a hint of detail in the eyes. I'd like to bring that out even more, to add more depth to the image. So in a bigger print, the viewer sort of is confronted with this kind of surreal color in the costume, and then they look closer, they say there's another level of reality in there. So bring the eyes out. And then the other thing that I'd like to do is just create a vignetting mask in this image to make all the corners darker, to continue to try and make the main subject even more dynamic. So I'm going to just go through here and turn on the layers where I've done the work there. I got rid of those horizontal lines in the background. Makes a big difference in the way that you look at this image and the way that your eye moves. You just don't get stopped anymore moving up and down. It lets that vertical movement happen. The next thing that I did was I took the one hand and flipped it and layered it in there, so you can see what you think about sort of continuing with the pair of twos and the symmetry. The next thing that I did was darkened all the way around, sort of a vignetting mask. I popped the eyes there to add another sort of room to the image, more depth to the image. And then I started to feel like running out of this texture up here. Now that I've done this work and gotten rid of these real strong lines in the back, that felt out of balance. So I took this information over here, and I layered it in at the top to keep that feeling of texture going. First on the left and second on the right. And then I came in and I felt like this now was a little too heavy, and I just knocked that back a bit. And the last thing I did was even more of sort of a feeling of vignetting. Here's where we started, and here's where we ended up. And the truth is, you could keep going with this. You know, we just finished a workshop in Zion National Park and had some people in the workshop who are very, very good at retouching and very good at Photoshop. And we were talking about how on images that you really like, that you can spend an enormous amount of time in the darkroom. I think that you could get to this point and then say, you know what, I'm really going to work on this image from a color standpoint. I think there are ways that you can make colors separate. Right now there's a bit of a cast to the whole thing, a little bit of a yellow kind of gold cast, and you could go in and start working that. But we're going to leave it right here. Again, for today, I want to turn that on and off one more time and then go back to the original. I love this use of the Lensbaby. I love this portrait subject. I really like the fact that Kevin chose this person as a portrait subject. I just think color is really beautiful. Quality of light is working really well here. And the way Kevin has framed this, I really like the sense of a symmetry that's set up, but also a real strong feeling of vertical movement. We want to say a big thank you to Kevin for sharing this image with us on The Mindful Eye and the Daily Critique. See you tomorrow, everybody.